Hi there. So as part of my course, An Introduction to Drawing Fashion Flats, I will be demonstrating an important skill for computer-aided fashion designers, which is how to fill an existing digitally drawn fashion flat with any plaid or print that you may want to use. So most fashion designers, unless you're working for a very high-end company, don't actually get to design their own plaids or prints. They choose from an existing lot of wholesale fabrics, just because it's very cost effective and makes more sense, especially when you're doing something pretty basic. So when you're digitally drawing flats, you have to keep in mind that you're going to have to recreate the plaid exactly the way that it is in order to create a sort of perfect replica of what you're going to be sewing. So I've pulled just sort of any image of a plaid clothing item. This is a pair of pants. And I'm imagining that if I was going to sew these pants, first I would want to draw the pants themselves. And then if I want to mimic exactly what fabric is going to go in there, I'm going to have to create a copy of this fabric. So to do so, the first thing I'm going to do is pull all of the various colors within the flat. I'm just going to create a couple of little boxes down here as color chips, so that I can see exactly what I'm working with. Most plaids or prints will exist of only 3 to 5 colors, just because that's the most efficient system for printing on fabric. So it looks like this one only really has 2 colors and then black and white. So I'm just going to use the eyedropper tool and fill my little boxes with the exact color by pulling as close as I can, and then I can use the color selection tool to alter that color in any way that I need to make it look exactly like the photo or like the physical fabric swatch that I have with me, which is a lot of the time that you're drawing. This is really just a black or a dark brown. I'm just going to keep it black, and this looks like kind of like a red. Sometimes the eyedropper tool isn't perfectly accurate, but you can always make adjustments to try and get a more accurate coloring. And then I'm just going to use white. So the next thing we're going to do is find the repeat of a fabric. So any plaid or print, when I say print, I mean like a motif. Like if you were wearing pajama pants that have butterflies on them, the butterfly would be the print, and it would just be the same butterfly repeating over and over again. So this is the same thing for plaids. They really create one square, and then that square repeats over and over again. It's very obvious in like a 2-color gingham, where you have like maybe a red square and a white square, and it's just red, white, right. But it's the same thing for these more complex looking plaids, where it's really just one box that you want to focus on. So I'm gonna draw a box around the one area that needs to repeat, and you'll get kind of a hang of selecting repeats from looking at more plaids. And then I'm going to select the image that I'm working with and the box, and I'm going to do Command 7 to create a clipping mask. And this isn't the best sort of thing to work from, but I can get an idea. And then I'm going to create a perfect square using the rectangle tool. I'm just going to do 2 inches by 2 inches to get a bounding box for the surrounding lines that I'm going to create within the plaid. So then next I'm going to select the background color. So for this case, it's just this taupe. I'm going to do the same thing with the eyedropper tool to select it. And then I'm going to just use the rectangle tool to draw rectangles exactly where I see them. So I'm going to start right at the top and just do 2 big black rectangles. And if you want to create the same one and change the direction of it, I'm just going to make a copy, Command C, paste, Command V, and then I'm going to use the rotation tool, double click, and make it 90 degrees. And this will create a copy. And then the main thing that kind of makes them look authentic is changing the opacity of the lines. So just in the properties tool over here, I'm going to change it to about 80%. And you'll see that it creates a similar look. And the more I look at this, it actually looks like it's a few separate rectangles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer on top a few more to kind of make the same thing. So you're really just looking at the exact plaid that you have, and you're drawing it identically to the way that it exists. And then we're going to repeat it, and the Adobe Illustrator will actually create a larger version of it that can be shrunk down and put into plots. It's really easy to use. I'll show you how to do all that, the scaling and so on. So that looks a little better. I think maybe I'll change these ones down, the opacity as well. Maybe we'll do 90%. And then we just have these red lines. The white ones are hard to see. If you're selecting an image just for practice and you don't sort of need to specifically recreate an existing thing, I would try and select a very high resolution file, just so that it's not blurry, kind of like the one that I'm looking at. So the same thing with those ones. We're going to reduce the opacity. The 80% isn't set in stone. You can kind of change it around and see which one looks the best. And then it looks like there's one white line down the front here. It's kind of hard to see, but I'm just going to add it in. And I'm going to reduce the opacity of that one as well. You just don't want to play around with the opacity of the background, because then depending on what your flat is sitting on, it won't look quite right. I think there might be another white line going the other way. I'm just going to add one more. And that'll give us an idea. So then, to take your repeat, you're just going to drag it into the swatches window. So we'll do window swatches. Oh, it's already open. And I'm going to drag everything that I've just drawn into one of these little color chips. And then I'll double click that chip and it'll open it and show you how it looks as a repeat. So that looks pretty good. As long as all the lines are connecting to each other evenly, everything's hitting at a 90-degree angle, it should work. You can also grid in different ways. This is just a basic grid that we would do for a plaid, but if you were doing a print, you can offset your motifs. This is often called a half drop. But this looks good, so I'm going to click done. And I'm just going to release this so that I can see the exact image that we started with and make sure that the pants look pretty similar as far as scale and so on goes. Put these over here. And to fill the flat, all you do is select the parts that you want to be filled and click on your new print. Oh, that filled the outlines. There we go. And you can see that it's huge. So the next thing we're going to do is Object, Transform, Scale. And make sure that you transform only the pattern and not the object, otherwise it's going to make your pants really small. So just uncheck all of these boxes and remaining transform patterns. And I'm going to try 50% and see how I like that. It's still a little big. Let's do 25. That looks closer to what we're working with. So I'm going to click OK. And then, just so that everything's not perfectly aligned, you can see when they've sewn these together, the boxes don't all touch each other at the seams. So you can do the same thing with a flat. All you have to do is hold down, there's a little key on the keyboard that looks like a squiggle. I'm not entirely sure what it's called. I know it's an approximate sign in math. So you just want to hold that button down and drag to move it as if you normally would, but it'll just move the pattern. So I'm just going to move this kind of up and down, just make them so that they don't line up. Makes it look a little bit more realistic. I'm going to do the same thing for the belt loops. Oops. And there we go. If it's a little busy to kind of see what you're looking at, you can always reduce the opacity of the actual pattern. Let's see how that looks. Do the same way that you would do with the boxes and just reduce it. I'm going to do 90%. And then we'll drag it over to the white. And it might be a little easier to see the black outlines through it. But there you go, that's the basics, and it looks pretty similar to what we're working with. You can do that with any existing plaid.